Welcome everybody to our second webinar on cooperation and collaboration. This evening we're going to be discussing the different types of cooperation and collaboration. My name's Kerry Allison. I'm a consultant at SAC Consulting, and tonight we're hosting this on behalf of the Farm Advisory Service. We're very lucky this evening to be joined by three wonderful speakers with a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight to give. So we have Jim Booth, we have Russell Brown, and we have Donald Ross. In a moment, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them, give you an introduction, and let you know what to expect. I'm going to chair a question and answer panel at the end of this evening, once all of our speakers have had a chance to share some insight. So firstly, we're going to hear from Jim Booth. I do apologise if you can hear my dog in the background. He's very protective. So Jim Booth is the head of co-op development at SAOS. He has over 35 years of hands-on experience in business consultancy and cooperative businesses. He specialises in agriculture, food and drink, and the rural economy. As the head of co-op development at SAOS, Jim's responsibilities include leading cooperative business development, which involves providing a range of services, including board governance, strategic reviews, risk registers, and change management, amongst others. His development advice has assisted cooperation horizontally amongst farmers and rural businesses in a variety of co-op enterprises, and vertically in marketing chains involving supply chain partners. He brings a wealth of knowledge on farmer cooperation and has extensive networks and experience of cooperation around the world. Next, we're going to hear from Russell Brown. Russell Brown is from Inverdivet Farm in Newport of Tay. Russell's the chairman of the newly formed ware marketing co-op, the Scottish Potato Co-op, or SPC. Russell has a significant farming business extending to some 2,500 acres. The business is run in partnership with his wife Hilary and his two sons. The main enterprise is ware potatoes, 370 acres, with the balance down to a range of combinable crops and vegetable lets. There is also a small sheep flock, 250 ewes, to utilise permanent grass. Russell is a keen supporter of farmer-owned businesses, being a member in a range of co-ops, including Scottish Agronomy, Oatco, Tayforth Machinery Ring, and Ringlink. The Scottish Potatoes Co-op is just in its second year and has a turnover of £13.5 million. It markets 70,000 tonnes of potatoes on behalf of its 19 farmer members. Russell is going to share his experience of the Scottish Potato Co-op, why farmer growers came together, and what the co-op does for its members. He will also speak about the role of co-ops in the supply chain and how they tackle the imbalance of power from multiple food retailers. And finally, I think my dog has finally shut up. I'm very sorry about that. Nope. Finally, we have Donald Ross from Rhynie Farm in Tain. So Donald's a fifth generation farmer, with the family being at Rhynie Farm for over 140 years. Donald's married with 3 children. Rhynie Farm is a mixed farm with both livestock and arable. The land extends to 640 acres with a mix of arable land, permanent grass and woodland. The livestock comprise of 100 suckler cows and 250 ewes, with the majority of the progeny being finished on farm. Donald is a strong believer in the benefits of cooperation and is actively involved in 5 different co-ops. He's a past chairman of the Highland Grain and is on the board of Scottish Agronomy. He's widely regarded as one of the best arable farmers in Scotland, winning numerous accolades, including most recently the Agri-Scot Arable Farmer of the Year in 2019. Donald's going to tell us about different types of co-ops he's been involved with and the benefits that he finds from this collaborative approach. I'm now going to put myself on mute and I'll hand you over to Jim Booth, who's going to kick us off. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Kerry, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you, and thank you for your support. I just hope that Kerry is not being burgled as we speak there. So she did admirably well to continue her introductions. So we'll kick off. I appreciate I'm probably talking to a mixed audience. There'll be those of you who are already involved in co-ops. So you've got a great understanding about cooperation, while others may have limited experience, but I hope my talk is of interest to you both. Seamus, if I could get the next slide, please. So this slide is really just to illustrate that sort of the range of co-ops we see in Scotland. And I'd like to kick off by saying all through the history of mankind, people have worked together and cooperated. It's in our DNA, so cooperation is nothing new. It's the cornerstone, really, of our evolution. After all, humans are social animals. We like each other's company. We need that for friendship, for fun, etc. It supports our well-being. But of course, cooperation, as we know it, is principally about economic gain. So it's that there has to be a commercial reason for individuals to work together. So we have a long, proud history of cooperation in Scotland. So it's people working together to overcome the challenges of farming in Scotland in terms of our land and climate constraints, and also our distance from our main markets, which is down in England. So this slide here is really just to illustrate the different kind of co-ops we have active in Scotland across all different sectors. You'll see examples there from dairying, from livestock, from beef, cattle, beef and sheep, from grain. We've got a number of grain marketing co-ops, potatoes, you'll hear from Russell tonight on potatoes, soft fruit, vegetables, very active. And of course, forestry. We've got forestry co-ops, timber co-ops, shellfish. You see an example there of shellfish, fishery co-ops, and deer and venison. So a full range across different types, typically marketing co-ops. It's marketing co-ops, but also input supply. We have the machinery rings, which are very important to farming. They really drive the fuel farming, allow farming to be very resilient. Specialist services, and then we have community co-ops as well. We'll maybe speak about some of these later on. Next slide, please. And just in terms of our members, we say that cooperation is really the engine room of Scottish agriculture due to our scale and influence. However, it's also the hidden gem, as not a lot of people know about our scale, and to be honest, we don't shout about it enough. Our co-ops are very quiet, they just get on with it, and so we're probably too modest as well. But collectively, SAOS's co-op members have a throughput of 1.5 billion. And collectively, that's over 25,000 members. That's a huge constituency, much larger than any other agriculture or rural organization. We also have it's a key employer in terms of the rural sector as well, something like 1,200 plus employees. And in terms of the scale, big market shares across many of the sectors. In pigs, for example, we'd have 90% of the pigs which are not tied, like cattle foods, major in the cereal side, milk and potatoes as well. So, big market shares, big constituencies. So that's a key message I want to get across to you, is about the scale of cooperation in Scotland and the constituency it is. Next slide, please. What is a co-op and how is it different? First thing I should say is cooperation is massive around the world. 1 billion people depend on their livelihood on co-ops. And there's 3 times as many people who are a member of a co-op than have our own shares. It's just massive. And even in the UK, where we're lagging behind the rest of the world, we've got over 7,000 co-ops in the UK contributing £38 billion and having something like 14 million members. So 1 in 5 people in the UK are a member of the co-op. So it's it's, you know, it's a significant contributor to the UK economy. However, that said, one of the problems about cooperation is the co-op business model is not well understood. And that's what I really want to go to explain through this slide here, is very briefly the co-op business model. The first thing, and that's a key distinction about co-ops, that the members are both the owner and the customer. So they're the customer of this service, and that makes them unique. And ownership matters. You know, there's that psychological aspect of being a member and a joint owner of the business as well. The focus of a co-op is about member benefit. So it's not on external shareholder returns. So the profit, the surplus is retained amongst members and the farming community rather than leaked away to external shareholders. And that's really important. Co-op members also have real control rights. So, and that's protected by co-op law, which is really strong. And that's in your co-op rules. That's unlike if you're a shareholder. And a shareholder, you don't have any control rights at all. The only rights you have is either to buy or sell your shares. So it's totally different. And we talk about co-ops having multiple bottom lines. So first and foremost, there it must be economically competitive. It must be a viable business and return a profit. You know, that's a given because it's we're operating in a very competitive commercial markets. But also there's other focus when we're talking about a co-op as well. So there's this bit about looking after our members, helping our members to improve their performance. There's a bit about care for the community. There's a whole bit about the social capital bit, local employment, local facilities. And that's why we talk about this multiple bottom lines. In a commercial company, an investor-only company, it's all about profit and profit maximization. In a co-op, it's much broader and it involves multiple bottom lines. And when you think about a co-op is all about people. It's all about people. People coming together to achieve something that they can't do individually. And it's people who have a common purpose. While in an investor-owned company, it's all about capital. It's all about capital and return on capital. So something totally different from a co-op. A key part of a co-op as well, and that's part of their principles, is about education and about helping members to improve their performance. That's a big part of what co-ops do, the knowledge transfer bit, the information, all that information from marketing co-ops going back to their members to help improve their performance, to improve their bottom line. The other thing to say about co-ops is that co-ops are governed by a set of values and principles. So it's the values of self-help, equality, equity, and solidarity. So they don't hand out the begging bowl looking for government to sort things out. They actually do it themselves. So it's this can-do attitude. It's about making things happen. And that values and the 7 principles is really important. At the end of the day, it's all about trust. Trust and transparency, that's a key thing. And the final thing about the co-op business model makes them unique is co-ops take a long-term view. So a co-op business is never for sale. And that's really important. It's there for future generations. Unlike an investor-owned company, it's always for sale. They're always looking for an exit. So there's big differences between a co-op and an investor-owned company and really trying to understand the co-op business model. Next slide, please, Seamus. So I'm not going to go through this slide. This is really about the benefits of the cooperation. I think they're well evidenced. I think what I would like to say about this is in the past, or first and foremost, the main benefit has always been economies of scale. So the benefits of economies of scale in trying to negotiate, better prices for inputs or access to markets and better prices for your produce. That's the most obvious thing. But nowadays, I think the benefits of cooperation has moved beyond that. And a big part of it now is about saving time and hassle for members. We know that farmers are more and more time constrained. And so the co-op plays a really important role in helping their members to reduce that hassle to save them time. Another aspect which is increasingly important, and everyone who's active in the farming community will know that, it's that the feature of our business environment is about market uncertainty and volatility and risk. That's increasing all the time, and it will increase in the future as well. So again, another big benefit of being part of a co-op is that it's a route to manage that risk, that market risk and volatility, by pooling that as well. Access to innovation, innovation, things are driving on, and that's a key part of a co-op as well. It's keeping ahead of the curve and looking about new developments, new technology for the benefit of their members as well. But all in all, it's just about trying to build resilience, helping farmers, farm business to build resilience. And there's another part about the benefit of corporations, that broader part of it's a really important rural development tool. I would say it's a rural development tool to help rural communities. So there's local businesses, local ownership, local employment, local facilities, and that's really, really important. And I think the final thing I would say here, the key one is to overcome this fragmentation. Increasingly, the supply chains, we all work in supply chains, food and drink supply chains, they're becoming more concentrated and dominated by multinationals and the multiple super retailers. And so individual farm businesses are micro businesses, very, very small. And basically they're price takers. They're at the bottom of this sort of chain here. And cooperation is the only way you can address that, by people working together. So next slide, please. Yeah, I put this slide in because I just wanted to sort of tease out and just talk about, why farmers join a co-op, and then what are they looking at when they're thinking about the co-op, and what are the benefits and what's in it for me. And we'll talk about these farmers or members wearing these multiple hats, these 4 hats. The first hat is the patron, and what that means is they're a customer of the service. That's the key bit about it. So they're joining because they're going to use that service, and there's an economic advantage. That's a key one. Another consideration is being the owner. They are co-owner of the business, so they have a stake in this business, so they can actually have a view about the future and how it's run and future strategy and activities. So that's really important. There also could be an investor. In some co-ops, you would have to invest capital, and therefore as an investor, you're looking for, what am I going to get back for this investment in capital? What's the return I get, and what's the risk? And then the final hat, this final role, is about the community bit. The community, it sits in a rural community, so I'm interested in what the co-op can do for my community as well. So this is sort of thought process an individual would look at when they're thinking about joining a co-op. And we know from research around the world in different types of co-op that the patron is the most important one, and that's the reason why people would join a co-op. What do I get back? That economic advantage. But the second most important one is the community member. What's going to happen to my community? And that's really important to farmers, because the rural community is really fragile. They'll see shops, schools closing. And so it's great to have a co-op that's active in your community. Again, back to this local ownership, local facilities under local control. Next slide, please. I put this slide in to think about, I'm very positive about the benefits of cooperation, but the truth is not everyone cooperates. And so we'll have to think about, why do some farmers not cooperate? And the first reason is that a lot of farmers will think, well, I don't need to. They can do it all themselves. They'll have a full set of machinery, equipment. They can buy in the services, and they would just like to be independent. They like independent, and they like being in control themselves. And that's fair enough. But they have to realize that does come from a cost. And again, they're still in that whole supply chain. They are relatively small. There's an issue as well in terms of the image of co-ops. Some people have a very old-fashioned image saying that co-ops are quite traditional and backwards, and nothing could be further from that. And if you're involved in our co-ops, you can see what our co-ops do and how they are at the cutting edge of the developments. It's true to say we've had some failures in co-ops in the past, and therefore people will think, well, why would I get involved in co-ops? Because co-ops fail. And so we have examples I've highlighted there of Angus cereals, so we can maybe talk about that, the reasons why co-op fails. But what I will say is the failure rates of co-ops is nearly half that of the alternative investor-owned companies. So again, it's part of the selective memories. And a big part is about just the mindset of farmers. And I think it's just understanding that the default position that people like doing it themselves, but they have to realize it comes at a cost and they are losing opportunity. Next slide, please. Well, I put this one in, I think I have one more slide after this one. I wanted to show how we compare with the rest of Europe. And what this shows here is the total output for agriculture is the blue line. So that's the bottom blue line for these countries, these selected 6 countries. And then the red line is the co-op turnover. And what you'll notice here, that in all the European countries here, their co-op turnover is greater than the output from their agriculture, all with the exception of the UK. And what that means is our co-op participation rates is behind the UK, but the key bit I wanted to highlight here is that what that means is there's a loss of opportunity, because for the co-op turnover to be higher than the agricultural output for that country, what it means is that the co-ops are involved in added value activities and processing activities. And what that means is they get a higher share of that final price, that final product price that the consumers have to pay. So that means that there's more wealth, there's more return to farmers, there's primary producers, but to the community as well. So we'll maybe pick that up later on if people want to speak about that and why that is such a difference. And next slide, please. So this is my final slide. And again, what I wanted to highlight here is just the steps that people would have to go through if you're creating a new co-op. And Russell has gone through that with the creation of the SPC. And so what it highlights is there's 8 steps. So there's 8 steps involved in creating a new co-op or looking to form a new co-op. And you have to go through all these steps. Each situation, each co-op is different. But really, you have to go through all these steps, and it takes time. You know, typically, I would say it takes at least a year to create a new co-op, and it might take longer. But the whole business planning process is the same, whether it's a co-op or whether it's a commercial business. There must be a commercial proposition there. So that's the key bit: is the business planning, the market research. Have you got demand? Have you got routes to market? And have you got a viable, sustainable business? Now, if you haven't got that, then it's not even worth thinking about creating this co-op. But another key part is this leadership group. So it has to be fronted. There must be farmers there at the heart of it to give it that credibility with fellow farmers as well. So there's a key part. And then my final bit is just about, again, to summarize, just the 6 different types of co-ops. So as I said, the main ones is marketing co-ops, which are marketing co-ops and the produce that farmers produce. Then we have a whole range of input supply. So it's procuring inputs for their members, a whole range of inputs. The machinery rings, which are massive in Scotland and a great success. We have 9 rings, something like about 8,500 members, 95 million pounds of throughput there, and they really, they allow agriculture to operate really, in terms of machinery sharing, labour, just everything they're involved in now. We have the specialist services co-ops, we have community co-ops, which are totally different, and then we have these multi-purpose co-ops. So that's the different types of co-ops. So that's a quick introduction, an overview of cooperation and the co-op business model and the different types and the scale of co-ops in Scotland. What will now follow now is Russell give you an example of a marketing co-op. And particularly, I think what's really interesting about this story is about, it's about the supply chain and some of the challenges and market failures in the supply chain. So Russell, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, can you just move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, I think this all began with a number of growers and our marketing, who became our marketing agent, having frustration with having a lack of power to do anything very much about it. So our whole conversation started because he couldn't, in the first place, market any other potatoes other than the ones, because he was working with IPL, who supply ASDA. So if our potatoes fell out of spec, he was frustrated because he was letting the growers down because he wasn't able to sell them for anybody else. And we were similarly in the dark a lot of the time. At the time, we were supplying half our potatoes to Greenvale EP, who supplied Tesco and Sainsbury's, and the other half was going into IPL at ASDA. And we had no control over the fact that Greenvale were about to lose the contract to supply Tesco, and then immediately our supply wasn't needed for that packer. So the challenge then was, what were we going to do about it? So if you move on to the next slide, please. This actually part of it was a bit easier than we thought it might have been. So the first fact was that Fraser came to, in the first place, about 5 growers and said, look, this is what I think we as a group need to do. And that was to collectively market all the potatoes in one group. We started off from the point that we had all put potatoes into IPL, and 70% of the potatoes that we all grew as farmers were sold by IPM. And then it was just a case of putting all the potatoes in one pot and then look at how we could best deal with everything. And in a way, we started in reverse, because we knew what we had contracts to supply. And then we went on to the fact that this is what we need to grow because of demand for baby, which are the salad potatoes, the red potatoes, and the Maris Pipers, and the big market is the whites. So when we sat down, we said, right, well, we can alter our growing patterns to match what we're seeing. I've actually lost the screen on the.
I don't know if you want to just continue, Russell.
Yeah, I'll just go on. I mean, so the main constraints from our point of view were that we had frontline packers, which are Branston, IPL, which was ASDA, Morrison's that supply Morrison's, and etc. And these had all the control, and they also wanted only the top quality potatoes. So the first thing as a group is that we took out a processing contract for lower spec potatoes. In that case, it was Maris Piper. So we knew we had a market for these Maris Pipers, whether they hit the washing spec or the supermarket spec or not. And as I'd explained before, as individuals, we could have been backing the wrong horse. But then when you pull 70,000 plus tons of potatoes together, then that means that if this plan could be shared, and if there were small movements in the market, then the co-op could actually deal with it quite easily. And then the big thing for us is that we want to get our potatoes into Scottish packers, because there's an overproduction of Ware potatoes in Scotland. So we have to, one way or another, whether we pack them in Scotland and put them into English supermarkets, or we sell them down south to get packed, which either way gives you an extra cost of about 40 or 50 pound a tonne. And it also put you in a very weak position in a year when the potatoes are plentiful, like in a year like this, because basically that haulage just about kills the market altogether. The other big thing from the co-op's point of view is that we controlled the supply. We had the orders and we knew what our growers' potatoes were like, and we were able to supply them in the order that we wanted to, and not in the order that the supermarket could take it, which meant that we could, the potato skin finish can fail quite badly as we go through the season. So we were able to pick out the ones that were going to deteriorate and sell them first. And that's actually been one of the biggest assets for us. And the main objective was actually to sell all our potatoes for good money, as opposed to just getting the good ones away at a good price, and then not get anything for the second class ones. So how did we go about it? Well, we got a core of the 5 larger growers, which we were just one of them, which supplied about half the tonnage of the whole group. So we put these into what we became our board in the second year. But the most important factor was Fraser Malcolm, who is our marketing agent. He was very popular and well trusted by just about all the growers, and it probably would not, and no, in fact, definitely wouldn't have happened unless he had been about and keen to take it apart. The next stage was when we decided we were going to go ahead with this, is that we contacted SAOS. And I must say that Jim was extremely keen to help us and was extremely effective in showing us what we need to do. We then had to draw up 3 different documents. We had our prospectus, which was put out to any potential growers, which I've got a copy of here. And then we had our operating procedures and the members' agreement. Now these are all vital documents in their own way and are all part of the governance of the co-op. And if these are set out correctly and everybody knows their place and what they're trying to achieve, then it makes everything a lot easier for them in the future. So once we got going, the priority was to get the tonnage. Once we got the growers, it was important that we then got the tonnage and the contracts and made our decisions on how we were going to sell and who we were going to sell to. In actual fact, this time, once we had got IPL on board, that they would carry on with the contract that the growers had individually, and we put them in a pool. Once we got them on board, we then got quite a few other ones on Morrison's, Stirfresh, a local packer in Angus. We had Greenvale, Cockles, and eventually we've got about 5,000 tonnes into Branson. And once the co-op was set up, we basically started doing things in reverse. We got the growers to put in a growing plan of what varieties and when they were going to grow them. And from that, then Fraser and David, who joined them, and James Mackey, Dundee, they then started to work through the plan, and then they would tweak that. And if we were needing more salad or we're needing more Maris Piper, which was very much the case, they then had to go out and persuade growers to grow them and, you know, help them create an environment that they could grow them to the right standards. I think one of the big things, and hopefully we managed to do it as a co-op, is is to have open and transparency. The whole point is that if people know exactly what's happening in the potato market, it can be extremely difficult, and there can be a lot of news, a lot of bad news that's got to be given out. But we've found that if you're truly honest with people and they know exactly what the position is, that everything can work out, and in the average, it can work out for everybody's benefit, in fact. I'm not sure if I think I've gone through most of the things that I wanted to say, but I would finish up by saying that
Are you okay, Russell?
yeah, I thought I just lost the screen altogether there. No, you're still there. No, I think that it's the order that you do things. I think in conclusion, I would say the first thing really is to get the group of people that have the same idea, want to head in the same direction. And then from then on, it's all about getting the governance and the setup of the co-op done correctly. And basically that's our story.
That's brilliant, Russell. Thank you so much. And thank you also for dealing with our technical issues there so efficiently. I really appreciate that. Donald, I know you've had a couple of issues with your internet too. I think it must be everyone streaming the football. Are you back with us? Is your signal nice and strong?
I'm hoping we're there. Can you actually hear me clearly, I hope?
I can hear you perfectly, Donald.
Wonderful. Well, just bear with me and I'll just make a start. So I'm Donald Ross and I am a cooperator. Now, that might seem strange from someone who spends 300 and odd days a year working by himself. But anyway, I'll give you a background. I farm here at Rhynie Farm near Tain. We'll go on to the next slide, please, Seamus. That's grand. So as you can see there, we're farming 280 hectares, 253 owned, including one we cropped, and we have 27 hectares rented 15 miles away at Dornoch. We have 100 suckler cows, and the progeny's finished generally, apart from this year, because the lure of the pound, and I sold the heifer store, which was quite successful. So we have 250 ewes, mule ewes, and they go away to store. They'll half go away store, and half are fattened. We should hopefully have 40 next week for a start, and just as the price starts to crash. So we've got 8 let cottages and a 200 kilowatt biomass system. And that's basically to keep my wife happy. We live in a big old farmhouse and it's Baltic 9 months of the year. It's very pleasant when it's lovely outside at the moment. So we have 160 hectares of arable land and 70 hectares of permanent pasture and 50 hectares of woodland, 2 SSIs and a loch. Soil types are variable. It's mostly the arable land is sandy loam over sandstone, and the permanent is peat over blue clay, which makes life interesting during the winter. Fortunately, we're under the rain shadow effect, so we get 700 mils of rain, and generally it's a very, very good area to live in, but don't tell too many people. Staff consists mostly of myself, as I said, for 300 years, and occasional casuals. I've got a mate who helps me out with cattle, really cool, calm, collected guy who is the opposite to me. And I use contractors for silage, lime, and baling, and when something breaks down and I need a fire engine. So the rotation, wheat's my thing. I love wheat. I try and get it in. We get very good yields from it. Just the ground suits it. The muck that we produce from the cattle suits it, and a rotation will be oilseed rape, winter wheat, spring oats, winter wheat, tatties, winter wheat, spring barley, possibly another spring barley, and we'll try a second wheat just for a wee bit of variation. And this year, for the first time in 10 years, I've got peas, but that could be an October harvest, maybe November. And a bit of grass and rotational crops. So yeah, that's a basic overview of the farm. So if we could have the next slide. So big cheesy grin, smiley farmer, don't see many of them, but that's the co-op journey. We started in the 80s, and father, during the 80s, the lamb price was pretty poor, 35, 40 pound a lamb. Seemed to last like that for a long time. And him and a neighbour and a few guys from Nairnshire formed Murray Firth Lamb in the 80s. So he's a founder member, and I vaguely remember him going off to meetings as a kid, and being full of enthusiasm and coming back, and lambs departing to north of England for to be turned into kebabs and whatever. And then in 1989, we had HBS formed, the local, it was Highland Machinery Ring originally, and we were early members of that as well, and we've used them. I'll come on to them and discuss what we get out of them. And we joined Highland Grain and Scottish Agronomy in 1997 for the same reason. We had a ramularia infection in the spring barley, and 10.5 an acre didn't seem very good. So we joined Highland Grain to improve the marketing and take the heat off the business a bit there. And we joined Scottish Agronomy to get independent advice. And again, we'll come on to talk about them as well. Now, my own personal journey, I started working for HBS in 1999, on the road, in the office. And at the time, it was turning over just over £1 million. And the aim for me was to try and expand the business a wee bit. And I mean, to be fair, I was in the office more than I was on the road, but really enjoyed it. There was three girls working there, and you know, it felt like you're actually making a difference at the time. A lot of straw, a lot of diesel being sold, bits and pieces of contracting, and that. And then after that, focused on the family, my 3 children, my wife, did a bit of contracting at home as well. We used to do a lot of crop spraying, got a direct drill, and bits and pieces like that. And then 2006, got invited onto the board of Highland Grain, which was a transitional thing for me. I mean, I wasn't, probably still aren't the most confident person in the world, but I was there for 12 years, just got into the business. Simon Barry was a big influence on me, kind of helped me out, give me a lot of confidence, and just generally, I mean, you just got to know the business very well. I was eventually chairman for 5 years, and we went from 25,000 tonnes up to over 40,000 tonnes. There's 35,000 tonne storage, but we'll come on to that as well. And eventually I was involved in selecting the new MD. Gary took over there. I mean, without the help of the rest of the board, I mean, he seems to be doing very well. The rest of the boards helped select him, and yeah, very happy with that so far. And I'm currently a director of Scottish Agronomy. Just really enjoy it. Just the like-minded individuals that are on it. No, it's good thing to do. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So Highland Business Services covers a very big area. Does it put straw to Caithness? It's involved in doing work in the islands as well. Based at Tor, near Inverness. Been going, as I say, for 30 years. And now, I mean, when I was there was 600 members. It's 1,100 members now, and it's turning over 6 million. Doing a lot of fuel, fertilizer, and straw. So, I mean, from a personal point of view, I mean, this is their member value statement. It's hot off the press. I mean, you can just see it there yourself. They do a lot of good in the Highlands. Personally, do a lot of fuel with them. AdBlue, electricity. I mean, it's a one-stop shop. You can, you name it, you can get it. Get the foot trimmer up, he comes and trims the feet of the cattle. Hire my grass drill out through them, buy fertilizer, and they do training. My son has done his forklift test through there with them last year, with Andy, and it went. It's just great that you can just phone them up and they'll organise it if you need anything. They do my wages because I just hate paperwork. Just can't stand it, and that takes a lot of pressure off me, and it makes life so much easier. Rather than, I mean, there's only 3 of us, my wife and my son, employed in the business, but that's just a hassle I can do without. So we'll go on to the next slide. Oh, I missed one. Okay, well, we'll go with that. I mean, as I said, there's provision of labour, commodity supply, training services, wages, and you get discounts on new vehicles as well. So Highland Grain, it was formed in 1978. There was 4 members initially and 4,000 tonnes based at Tor. And the bins that you can see, the wee bins in the foreground, they were the original ones, I think. And they started off the site. What's there now? What's there now is 35,000 tonnes on site, or thereabouts. And there's 85 members stretching from Golspie to Forres, so it covers quite an area. And on the haulage side of it, I mean, there's different charges for different distances away from the site, but they're not stupidly expensive in comparison to, say, if you're hauling them yourself, or paying someone to haul them. So 40 to 45,000 tonnes of malting barley, and they're turning over 11 million. We've got 3 core customers and a few smaller ones. Plus, they've got marketing arrangements on oilseed rape, wheat, and oats with other cooperatives. One of the great things about Highland Grain is their innovation. They've done a lot of that over the years. They've streamed the barley into different nitrogen bands, and that actually makes the barley more marketable because it's consistent. The process is really so much better than just bunging a bulk and so you get repeat customers from it. And another interesting thing is, I mean, when everyone else is putting biomass plants in, we were looking at utilising the dust that we produce. So we've got a dust burner there, or 2 dust burners now, that fire up the Cumbria dryers, just your bog standard Cumbria dryer, and it's basically a hammer mill, blows air in, and everything explodes, and you get heat, and it goes straight, and it gives you a consistent heat. So you're utilising the dust that comes out of the grain, or the small grains, the lights within the plant. I mean, it's so successful that we might not have enough barley to do it, but feed barley, actually, the opportunity cost on feed barley means that we could use that as well. Final thing is the capital account. If there's a profit made by the business, then it goes into, it's divvied up like a dividend at the Coopy. It's divvied up into the tonnages, the committed tonnages that the members produce, and you get a share of the money. Now, because we've borrowed money, we have to produce a profit, and the profit then goes into this capital account, which you can only really get, 1 if you leave, and 2 if you sell up, or 3 if you pass on, and you're a sole trader or the like. So next slide, please. So Highland Grain, the advantages of it, it's got strength in numbers. So there's 85 members producing 40 to 45,000 tonnes of grain, and that is far more marketable than even our largest producer, who's producing 4,000 tonnes of grain. And it also takes the hassle of marketing away from the likes of myself as a grower. I mean, I can grow the stuff, I enjoy the marketing side of it, but if you can get someone who's on the ball, they're looking at the markets all the time. It's not any easier, and I mean, there are times when you go, "Oh, I could have done better myself," but in reality, I would say not. So you spread the costs of the business. You've got 85 members piling into one place. It's stored there. It's looked after by one person, and it's all monitored. You're not having to worry about the heating. You're not having to worry about the nitrogen's been wrong. It's in there, and it's got a whole, and it sits there until it goes. Now, the important thing is with malting barley is that not all of it goes in the year that it's produced. So we'll be holding stuff over this harvest to sell to the likes of Diageo in November or December, and it's only in January or February that they will switch over. So you've actually got maybe 5, 6, 7,000 tons that's sitting held over, so that these guys can produce it. So I mean, if anyone's looking at, for instance, doing a grain co-op, just keep that in mind. And it gives the growers peace of mind because you don't have to look after it. Someone else is doing that for you, and it goes. It also, they take out, the Highland Grain takes out insurance if it's in store, and it saves. If something does go horribly wrong, then they, in theory, have insurance to deal with it. So ad hoc issues, basically, if a load, it's pre-sampled, it goes in the heap, it gets tested before it leaves the farm. It gets tested when it gets to the grain store, and if it fails, they'll test it again and see if if they can get it in. I mean, it's not rejected ad hoc. It's just it'll get tested, and they'll do their best to try and get it into the group. And if it fails, well, there's a home for it. There's feed barley, or it can be traded and used to burn in the grain, but burn it as well. Another key bit is the quick payment of the group. If I put a load off on Friday the 7th of August, then I will have £120 per ton in my bank account by the following Friday. So you're getting paid up front. Now you don't get that with the other guys, and then at the end you'll get a top up at the end of October, beginning of November. So it helps cash flow, helps keep pay the machinery for your chemicals, your fertilizer, and it just helps keep things flowing. The other thing is, I mean, you've got the core values of trust and traceability, transparency and accountability. So I mean, that's co-op principles. And one of the key things with Highland Grain is that every year we have an annual prize giving, which is held either in Glenmorangie, the distillery, or it's held in one of the hotels in Tain. So it's fine and handy for me, and we have a great night, and we celebrate or drown our sorrows as to what the barley price is. So next slide, please. Yeah, so Scottish Agronomy, like I say, we joined in 1997. You'll see there it was formed in 1985. I don't know whether that was, I suspect it was before harvest, but after 1985, most people over the age of 40 will remember what that was like. And I think it probably helped in many ways, because there was so many problems with ear blight and whatever. And it's developed into just a large co-op, a large agronomy co-op, 200 plus members. And it covers 50,000 hectares of cereals and has a large percentage of the Scottish potato area. Now, the key part about it is it's independent, impartial, trials-led agronomy. So they have 20,000 trial plots. Some of them are targeted at the members, or the members can make suggestions as to what they're to do, and they look and they take the data from that and see what's doing best. So, as a member of Scottish Agronomy, you get an idea of what chemical, what regime is going to work most efficiently for your business, and you generally end up with good crops, and it certainly helps. It's also member focused. Like I said, the members have member meetings. There's trials days, which I think was last week, and And then there's member meetings at the start of the year, and the AGM, where they have speakers from all over the world come along and speak at it too. The staff is a key point of it as well. I mean, you can go in the trials team and come out and onto the trial, work your way up the trials team, or cross over onto the agronomy side of it, and be on the advisory side. So there's career progression in it, I mean, it's just a really good business. Now you can see their member value statement on the right-hand side of the screen there as well, which I'm sure you've had a look at. And also there's the Knowledge Hub, which is basically or as much information as they can get out over time. So you've got the bulletins, you've got trials data that goes back in time, so you can see how a specific chemical will work at specific times, which in this day and age, as we're losing chemicals, is important too. So yeah. So next slide, please. So why do I use Scottish Agronomy? So it's evidence-based. The trials, they get information from it, and that means that I can use them to do my with the trials-based knowledge within my business. The trials are up to date, and it's trials-led advice, and it's evidence-based. So it's more independence in agronomy decisions. So I mean, I'm 200 miles away from Fife, but I can get someone on the phone and I can make a decision if I want to do that or not. It's actually improved my knowledge within the business. I don't have someone holding my hand. Like Greg will come up once a month. We'll discuss what we're doing, and I can tweak it whatever way I want. I mean, it saves me money. That's an important part of it. One decision we've made this year has saved my chemical bill. I've made another decision which saved my chemical bill too. On the spring barley, we never put a first fungicide on, and on the oilseed rape, we only have one fungicide on it so far. I mean, it's my decision. I might pay a cost, but it doesn't look like it at the moment. So it also offers me value for money. I can go out and I can try 2 or 3 different guys to quote them for their business, and work my way through them, and it seems to work quite well. But everyone seems to be happy to deal with me in that way, and it offers flexibility to the business as well, as I said. So we'll go on to the final slide. Thank you. So other co-ops, these are ones I'm members of. Aberdeen and Northern, we put all our stock, or virtually all our stock, goes through them, and buy most of it as well. United Oilseeds, they take our oilseed rape. There's a store 2 miles away. It's fine and handy. And Grain Co utilise them for some of my wheat and for my oats, which go to Boindy. And it's just, I mean, as I say, I'm a cooperator. I enjoy using co-ops, because, I mean, for the reasons that you can see there. So it's owned by the farmer members, and it's for the farmer members' benefits. It's one member, one vote. I mean, I'm a reasonable sized business, but if I had 50 tons, my vote is worth the same as someone with 5,000 tons. And the co-ops generally work in the best interest of the members. So I'm going to hand you back, I think, to Kerry now, and we'll see what she's got to say. I think there's some questions coming.
That was absolutely fantastic. Everybody, Jim, Russell, Donald, thank all 3 of you very much for your time. So we are going to go ahead into the question and answer session. So the first question I've got here is directed to Donald, but I think I'm going to open it up once Donald's answered it and see if, I'm sure Jim will have an opinion on this, and quite possibly Russell too. So the first question we've got here, Donald, why aren't there more co-ops in the UK?
Okay, I think, I mean, farmers are independent and have maybe slightly introverted. And they work. I mean, they maybe been indoctrinated into them that working together is bad. But you know, the small local suppliers. There used to be small local suppliers and buyers, and now it's generally large multinationals. So I think, I mean, there's obviously opportunities there. I mean, a lot of these multinationals, albeit, are actually co-ops from abroad, and they take the profits and take them back to their own countries from these businesses. So I mean, I think it's maybe there's opportunities there at the moment that should be. Well, to be fair, it'd be good to see that a few kind of us going over to the States or somewhere like that and ploughing money back here.
Jim, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I think the big difference is our agri-policy. So post Second World War, we had an agri-policy which encouraged home production and had statutory marketing boards. So there was no need to cooperate because we had statutory marketing boards. We had a milk marketing board, we had the potato board, we had wool board, we had egg board. So there was no need for marketing co-ops, unlike elsewhere around the world. So it's largely down to agri-policy. So that was the policy we had. Following, we joined the European Union. Part of that was to stop the statutory marketing boards were broken up. So we're now in a place where we have to play catch up. So we're having to play catch up with the rest of the world purely and simply because of agri-policy.
Thanks, Jim. Russell, did you want to input on that topic?
I don't really have much to add to that, except farmers in general in the UK aren't that cooperative. As you know, it's taken a long time for people to get that way, and I think it's basically just everybody has always thought they could do it themselves, and sometimes it takes a bit of help to decide that you can help each other out and not lose out. I think everybody thinks that you start working together, you drive yourself down to the lowest level, and these co-ops have proved that's not the case.
It's a really valid point. I think one of our attendees has asked a question for you, Russell, specifically. Perhaps this is a sign of someone looking to collaborate. How much does it cost to join the Scottish Potato Co-op?
Because ours is a marketing co-op, the cost isn't that great. So I don't think they'll mind me too much by saying what it is. So basically, we started off to get some key money to get the business going, which was about £50 a hectare. And then after that, the marketing fee is basically £3 a tonne. In addition to that, the board decided once we got started to take another £2 a tonne, which is basically for a fund for bad debt provision. So that money is sitting with the co-op, but it still belongs to the individual members. Because there is no infrastructure other than the marketing, and it's a relatively cheap system. Well, I would argue.
And Jim, if I can open that up, would you say that's the same for most co-ops? How much does it cost to join any co-op?
No, it does vary with the co-op and what the co-op's doing, but basically the cost of entry, the co-op membership is normally quite small. So typically it's £50, £100, something like that. So it's not a lot because it's not the share, this £50 say to join, it doesn't increase. It's not like working for a company and the share will go up in value. That share will always stay the same. So the benefit is not the value of shares and they moving up or down. The value is really participation. So it's your participation. It's the key thing. But in some co-ops, you will have to invest capital. So, for example, if you're a grain co-op with storage, you'd have to invest capital to get access to the storage. First Milk, they invest capital because they have big creameries, cheese plants as well. But the vast majority of them, like Russell's, the cost is not a lot, and principally because they're agency businesses. So there's a difference between agency and principal. So Russell was talking about the Scottish Potato Co-op. It's an example of an agency business, and so the co-op never takes legal title of the produce. The produce always lies with the farmer, the owner of the produce. So they just take a commission. It's a commission as marketing agent. So that's, as Russell says, in his case, it was £3 per tonne for marketing the potatoes. So it's a very lean, very efficient business, and it pools risk. It pools risk. So it's a no-brainer. And what, Russell was very modest. What SPC have achieved is quite remarkable within 2 years, and the value they've delivered is, is unbelievable.
Absolutely, that's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you very much. Our next question is to the whole panel. So Donald, I'm going to ask you first, then we'll come to Russell, and then Jim, we can follow up with you. So do you think that the consumer appreciates the role of co-ops in their food production? And is there value in messaging this on the front of the pack, etc.? So Donald, do you think that the average everyday consumer appreciates the role of co-ops in their food production?
I think probably not. The average consumer, they want food that's safe and cheap, and I mean that's probably two of the key points of it. I think I mean the whole. I mean the question is, does the consumer need to know it's from a co-op? I mean at present, I mean it's good that it's from a co-op and it's promoted on it, and I think maybe that's something. But the average farmer who is in a co-op doesn't know how a co-op works. The average consumer, you're going to be struggling there, would be my guess.
Russell, what do you think? Do you agree with Donald?
Yeah, I probably agree with it. I suppose as the co-op has a bit more longevity, we will hope that it does produce be like a brand to this on the supermarket shelves. So all our potatoes are marketed under the Scottish Potato Co-op, as opposed to being sold as individual farmers. And hopefully in years to come, that means something when people are buying these potatoes. But at the moment, I would say no.
Jim?
No, I agree. I mean, the consumer doesn't know, but then the responsibility lies with the co-op to inform them. So the consumer will be very sympathetic, supportive of local producers. We've seen that in the pandemic, the sort of growth in local, local food and supporting local businesses. So they'll be very supportive of that. And traceability, provenance is just the cornerstone now of food safety. So yeah, there's lots of positives there. So there's a great opportunity for co-ops, but the responsibility lies with them. We can't criticize consumers. It's our role to inform them and to take a value out of that.
We've had a question about when co-ops fail. So we've had a specific example given here about a high-profile co-op failing, Angus cereals. Jim, this was something you mentioned in your presentation. The question is, why did that fail? Can you answer that question?
Yeah, no, it's very simple. The first thing I would say is, and I said that in my presentation, is the failure rates of co-ops is, and this has been done by the data from HRMC. So data from HRMC shows that the failure rates of co-ops is nearly half compared to other conventional businesses. That's the first thing to say. But of course, because it's a co-op, the farmers community notices that. So it's much more high profile and it gets the press and that. We talked about Ingalls, Ingalls failing, but it doesn't make the same impact as a co-op. So that's the first thing to say. It gets noticed because it's a co-op and it's farmer owned. So why Angus cereals failed? Well, I think the key thing for me is just because it's a co-op doesn't mean to say it's going to succeed. We know it's very competitive out there. and therefore the business has to be well run. And at the heart of it, it's not the co-op business model that fails, it's actually people who fail. You know, it's people who fail, and it's a governance of the business. So if the business is not well run, if the strategy is not right, it's not well governed, then it deserves to fail. It deserves to fail because it's no guarantee, just because it's a co-op, people will stand aside and give you market share because it's just so competitive. So it's as simple as that. It's not the co-op business model. It's all down to people, and it's all down to governance. You know, Donald and Russell both said that, you know, just the governance of the business, how the decisions are made, is just crucial to any business, but particularly a co-op business.
Thank you, Jim. Off the back of discussing failure, we've had a question for Russell about risk. So who carries the risk in SPC? Is it the member or is it the co-op?
Basically, there's only about £1 risk. It's a limited position for the co-op. There's obviously some risk involved in growing potatoes in the first place, but no, the risk is not there. The risk is limited to £1, I think, if I remember correctly. Jim will keep me right. So no, that there's no way that happens, and hopefully everything we've done is set up in the right way so that that won't happen. So no, there's no great risk to the growers in joining any co-op, I would say.
It's a key thing, Kerry, if I can just add, it's a key thing that co-ops have limited liability. So that means that your risk you're exposed to is whatever you have invested in the co-op. And that's normally just your co-op share. Because as I said, in a marketing co-op, they're normally agency businesses, and therefore the legal title of that produce always lies with the member. So even if the co-op failed, the legal title of that potatoes in that case belongs to the member. The only thing that you could lose is your investment in that co-op. The other good thing about SPC is that they have pooled their risk, and you know, Russell talked about that, and that's really important. Rather than buying bad debt insurance, they actually insure themselves. So they've created a fund of 250,000, where if something happened with a bad debt with one of the loads of potatoes, it's pooled across all 20 members. And so an individual will never suffer. It's, you know, it's shared. So it's a great tool to manage risk. So conversely, by being part of a member of a co-op, you're reducing your risk and reducing your exposure to market volatility as well.
Which is a great example of one of those key benefits of being part of a co-op. Thank you both for your answer to that. The final question that I will ask in a moment is going to go to all three of you, and it is on what is your personal opinion, what is your greatest benefit of being part of a co-op, or what do you think the greatest benefit of being part of a co-op is? While I leave Donald and Russell to ponder that one, one very quick question, Jim, before we get to the final question. Are there currently any grants available to co-ops?
Currently, there isn't any just now, but normally there would be. So normally you'd be from the Food Processing Capital Corporation grant scheme. You know, there is, you know, that's available to all food processing businesses. It's a competitive grant, up to 40% grant, but there would be a bias. It goes in front of a pack, but there is a bias towards farmer corporations. So you'd be looked at, if you're up, an application would be looked at more favourably. But of course, we're just waiting, you know, we're in the midst of change, moving from CAP to the new agri policy. So we're just in the throes of introducing a new support regime. So, but what I would say, Kerry, just briefly, if people want to form a co-op because they want to get access to grants, that's not, you know, that's not the sort of key route. You know, the key thing is there must be a commercial advantage, a sustainable business. So if people say to me, look, I'm looking to form a co-op, what kind of grants do we get? That's not the right motivation for cooperating and looking at why people should cooperate. It's not about the grants. The grant is the sort of icing on the cake if you are eligible for that. It's all this the key is about business planning and the benefits of people working together. It's the foundation.
It's a great answer. Thank you, Jim. We'll, if it's okay with you, Jim, we'll pop your email address down in the chat box here. So if anybody did have a specific question about a co-op they would like to start or would like individual expertise or help from you, are you happy enough to give that?
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect. So on to the final question. Russell, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think has been your key benefit or highlight of being part of a co-op?
I think the key benefit is the shared risk of the whole group, to be honest, and the fact that instead of 20 farmers phoning, trying to sell potatoes, we have one person. So basically we've got a united voice, and we're just not flooding the market with potatoes like we would be if all 20 were making a phone call, and we'll leave Fraser and David to do that for us, and we can relax and wait for the orders to come in.
A very good answer. Donald?
Yeah, I mean, with being involved in so many co-ops, I mean, it's the shared risk. I mean, that's a very high priority, and it's probably an easy one for me to say. But I'll use specific examples. I mean, likes of Aberdeen and Northern, I save on my commission. It's half price because I'm a member, and it's a massive customer base. You know, Tainson's a big mark. From Highland Grain perspective, the marketing, there's always a home for my grain, be it feed or be it malting. Highland Machinery saves me time, and that's it. I just one phone, things are dealt with, I can get it delivered. That's it, and it's at a competitive price. And Scottish Agronomy, it's up to date information, and I can save on the chemicals. And I can see what's around the corner before it actually happens. I mean, in fairness, the biggest benefit I've actually had is actually personal development. Being involved in the boards, meeting lots of people, and just the whole journey. Just being involved with it. I mean, like I say, I mean, farming's now a lonely business, and it gets you out there. It gets you thinking differently. It gives you a wee bit more information to hopefully bring home to your own business. There we go, that'll do.
Better business and better self. I think that is a shining endorsement for the power of cooperation. Jim, is there anything you would like to say to round us off this evening?
No, I think it's a really good question, Kerry. So I was just thinking while Russell and Donald was answering, and I mean, for me, it's all about people. It's all about people, and as Donald said, it's about developing people. So I think that's the key benefit of cooperation. It's about developing human capital, which is the best return of anything at all. So giving people, knowledge transfer, education, confidence to do things themselves. So for me, it's all about people, social capital, and developing people to just do better themselves. So that's the key thing for me.
Gentlemen, Russell, Donald and Jim, I have to say a massive thank you on behalf of our attendees and also on behalf of the Farm Advisory Service. It's been a fantastic event tonight. I really enjoyed hearing your stories and your experience, and I'm absolutely certain that our attendees will feel the same way. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you and wish you a very nice evening.